Welcome back to Visited by Voices Live on a Friday in April, which means taxes are coming due for all of us that have waited to the last moment. And the other thing that goes with taxes is death, so we're going to talk about that a lot tonight. I am joined tonight, first off, by co-host of Visited by Voices Live, Sam.
Queefing blood, having cramps, eating sweets, sweets. What's up, y'all?
I'm not sure how to follow that at all.
Good.
How are you doing tonight?
Well, you know, I'm live streaming while I'm live streaming. I told you I was going to be talking about my period.
There we go.
There it is.
There it is. I'm no longer the most offensive person on the show. So we are also joined today by our very special guest, Stoker Award winner, author of The Rust Maidens and Her Smile Will Untether the Universe, Pretty Marys All in a Row, The Invention of Ghosts, and Bone Set and Feathers, Gwendolyn Kiste. Bam. We need to make her the big one.
Oh, hold on. There we go. And it's Kiste. We didn't do this ahead of time. We had all that time, and I forgot to tell you how to say my last name. Like, Gwendolyn Kiste. Totally on me. Like, I should have said something. I always forget.
No, I think that's really my job. I think no matter how you cut it. How are you doing tonight, Gwendolyn?
Doing good. Doing good. How are you guys?
Excellent. Excellent. It's great to have you here because, you know, the funny thing is horror writers have so few, any kind of writer really, but horror writers in particular have so few outlets to really reach out to people beyond kind of the echo chamber. So I think it's a great opportunity to have you speak with people who have a variety of familiarity with your work tonight. I think that's a real cool thing. The first question on every show is always, how did you get bitten by the horror bug to begin with?
That really, like, I always say, like, I was a horror fan before birth because my dad, like, read me Poe while my mom was pregnant with me. So it's always been there. It's always been something like I remember Edgar Allan Poe from always. And I grew up, we were always watching Hammer movies and Universal horror. And my mom loved Ray Bradbury. So it's just like both my parents love horror. It's just like, it's just like going home to me. I always say that it's like so comforting. Like most people are like, oh, it's so scary. I'm like, I mean, it is scary, but it's fun and it's like family. So yeah, always there.
Yeah, your writing has kind of a feel of Poe to it. Just the atmosphere, and it has like it feels kind of surreal, but it feels like I'm reading something very similar. So I was like, ooh, creepy stuff. So
hey,
yeah.
I'll take comparisons to Poe any day. So thank you.
That doesn't hurt your feelings, I'm sure.
Syphilis, so wait, was it syphilis? What did he die of? Maybe not that comparison. Don't take that comparison. But
maybe rabies. There is the speculation that Poe could have died of rabies. He loved animals, and like there's a chance that he may have gone up to help a sick animal. And my dad's, like I said, really into Poe, and supposedly they gave like a group of medical students. They didn't tell them who it was, but they gave them his symptoms, and they all came up with rabies. So it could have been rabies.
That actually makes a lot of sense because I mean, creepy dude. He's probably fucking around with bats at some point, right? So, yeah, carry rabies at some point. Like
now I can't get the idea of Poe going all Cujo on a family trapped in a car out of my head.
Well, see, what I'm thinking of is that when I was in high school, I knew there was an issue where a dead bat had gotten into a vending machine. And so because everybody at my high school was fucking stupid, they just started flinging it around. I'm thinking like a hacky sack. And then they had to come over they had to make a PA announcement. That might be redundant. But they had to go over the PA and tell us not to play with dead bats because rabies. And that's how I learned that. That's probably the only thing that was useful in high school.
And that's how COVID really started.
Wow, that's an intense story. Poor bat. Poor bat.
I feel really bad for it. I love bats.
Who doesn't love bats, besides your occasional German Shepherd? So I see the art behind you, and this is actually something that I think is pretty prevalent in your writing anyway. So you love Halloween a little bit, huh?
Definitely. My parents got married on Halloween. See, it all comes back to childhood. Like everything comes back to childhood. So yeah, it's always a big deal in our house. And like my mom made me like the best costumes because she's like a really good seamstress. I always had these really like cool, like weird little kid costumes. And I always had like because my parents always did an anniversary party on Halloween, but then they also let me, for like my class, have a Halloween party every year. So it was like I was like the cool kid that always had the Halloween party. So it's always been like a thing.
Did you ever get your mom to create that? Have you seen the classic Halloween postcard of the woman in the bat costume? It's from the late 30s.
Okay, yeah.
Did you ever kind of force your mom to do it? Make that?
I was like a little like kind of bat when I was really little. There's like a picture of me in like a little like kind of like a little bat outfit. So I think I just got started early. So I was like, I don't need that again. I was already that bat. So
what was your favorite Halloween costume that you can remember?
Wow. I mean, the bat was cool. I was also a witch, and it was great because it was like back in like the late 80s, early 90s. So I had like this weird little cat head on a stick, which is not as creepy as it sounds. That was like a thing. Like it was like plastic, and then you had like it was on a stick and you would like carry it around. But like now I'm thinking about it and it's kind of disturbing. But it was cool then. And there's this like really funny picture of me. And I my mom says I'm trying to smile in the picture, but I got this really weird look on my face. It's great. Now I need to find it again and put it up on social media because it always makes me laugh. But I love that one. But my mom made me all different kinds. Like, I was and sometimes it was like, the typical stuff of the day, like a Disney princess. Like, I'm not going to act like I was always like spooky. Sometimes it was like, hey, I want to be a unicorn. Although my mom made me this unicorn outfit and like, I was not just going to wear it one time. Like, so I would just wear it to places. I'm like, I don't care. And it like had like this thing, and it was great. I loved it so much. It was purple. And my cousin, who was 5 years older than me, also had a matching one. So like we would hang out in our matching like purple lame unicorns, which is probably a kind of cosmic horror all unto itself,
As someone who's worn lame, yes, very much so. Oh Lord, I had so many skating outfits like that. Jesus.
It's so strange that you say that because I asked my parents if I could be a unicorn for Halloween as well, and they beat me. No.
And that's why you're bald.
No, that
You
would
didn't get
be.
to the unicorn.
I can explain the baldness.
Much.
No, when I was a kid, I mean, you went to the department store and there was a row of, an aisle of Ben Cooper costumes in boxes with the plastic window, right? And I'd always look for whatever seemed to me to be like most like the films I loved, which I grew up in the Universal Monsters. I'm not quite old enough to have seen a first run or anything, but I can remember the Wolfman. The mask was pretty cool, but the garbage bag / smock that formed the rest of it was pretty awful. So I remember taking magic markers and trying to make it better, which is probably sacrilege to all those collectors of Ben Cooper costumes out there. But you're a kid. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I get some angry tweets, man.
You know what? I get them now. So what's the difference?
Yeah, fair enough.
Those costumes were so neat, though. I've seen them in there was a Halloween museum not that far from our house for a while. I think it's moved; it's not there anymore. But they had a ton of those old costumes that you could see them through the plastic window on the wall. So that was so neat. I don't know that I'd ever seen those really growing up. I don't know that they had them where I was. So it was neat. I knew they existed though. I love vintage Halloween stuff. I think it's so much fun.
That's so rad that you had a Halloween museum though. What was it?
Yeah, it moved. Yeah, it was it was in an old school in near Wheeling, West Virginia. I don't know if it's still open. I think that they moved, so they moved the actual museum. And yeah, so I'm not sure if it's still around or not, but it was really neat. We went there a few times. It was a really cool place.
That
is. Halloween museum.
Did they cover history of Halloween, just to that area, or just a little bit of everything?
A little bit of everything. They most of it was just different. It was a whole lot of stuff. All different traditions in Halloween, and they even had an Andy Warhol Dracula, and I think it was an original Warhol. I think it was an actual an original Warhol. I think it was a Dracula, if I'm remembering correctly. It was just a little bit of everything. The person was just a huge collector. It was so neat. I love that place.
Well, there's a big connection between Pennsylvania and Halloween, though. The first Halloween parade was in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Ooh.
So, I mean, the very first time. A lot of the traditions actually took root, mainly because if you look at the makeup of early century Pennsylvania, a lot of the traditions are those Northern European countries. So it makes some sense. But Dan is forcing us to get on topic and talk about something that we probably should. He wants to know about Rust Maidens. What inspired such a unique premise? Can I just, before you answer that though? I just want to say that in particular, lots of Cronenberg vibes, lots of Tetsuo the Iron Man vibes. Definitely, it's different than the rest of your work too. I think significantly.
That's interesting. And see, I'm actually glad to hear that, because I'm always worried that my work all kind of feels the same, because it's all coming from my mind, so it all feels the same to me, I guess. But yeah, I love David Cronenberg, and I love body horror. So that was definitely a place where it first started. But I think what it really was I wanted to write for my first novel for it to be body horror, but I didn't want it to be a transformation that I had seen done before. And there's been a lot of great stuff done with body horror. And so I kept thinking, that I wanted it to be some kind of coming of age with body horror, teenage girls. And I couldn't quite figure out how I was going to do that. And then I started writing another story that was based in the Rust Belt, because I'm from Ohio originally. And it was based in Cleveland in 1980, this other story I was writing. And I'd done all this research, and I was I finished the story, and I was very happy with the story. But when it was done, I'm I feel like I could stay in this same era for a while. And then I thought, well, how about this novel that, I want to work on? And then from there, I was well, what would be a transformation in the Rust Belt? I'm well, to rust, obviously. And from there, it was it just all kind of came together fairly quickly at that point.
It also, the one of your other work says, I think in some ways it's closest to is the invention of ghosts, simply because you have you have the in that case, friends, the tight female characters that have a friendship, and you also have the presence of a group of men coming or as a representation of a larger set of society.
Yeah Yeah, I feel like society is always the true villain in my work. I feel like that kind of goes through my work, like society is the true evil.
I definitely got that vibe reading Enter Smile and Tell Her the Universe, and it feels like it. There are a lot of stories in there that just feel kind of more like old feminist fiction, like Charlotte Perkins Gilman, The Yellow Wallpaper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry if I'm echoing. But yeah, did you have any? Did you have a lot of close relationships with other like? Did you have a lot of female friendships growing up? Because I had pretty much none.
Yeah, I had a few. Like, I mean, I just mentioned my cousin. Like, she and I were very close growing up. She was 5 years older than me, but she and I were fairly close. And I did have a couple friends, but I feel like I've heard other women talk about this, that many times growing up, we actually would have liked to maybe have more friendships, but like it can be kind of competitive sometimes, I think, unfortunately, especially when you're young, but sometimes that still doesn't entirely go away. But yeah, so not as many as maybe I would have liked. So I think sometimes that's why I write about so many female friendships, is because I think that that's like a thing that I don't think that there's as much encouragement of girls being able to be friends without there being competition. Like, we even think about movies over the years. It's like The Craft or Heathers or Mean Girls, and they always turn against each other. And so I think that that's like a sad narrative. So for me, I'm always trying to like think like, how can we write stories about women that there's going to have to be conflict in a story. Of course, that's, you know, how we write stories. Things have to happen or there's nothing going on. But then maybe it isn't so much that the girls are going at each other, but maybe other things are happening to even tear them apart. So that's something I'm always trying to look at with my work.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the Clawfoot Requiem with the relationship between Savannah and Sabrina, especially, you know, because I didn't have a sister growing up. I do have a couple of stepsisters, but I didn't get a chance to really grow up with them. Mm-hmm. And then I just lost a friend to suicide like last October. So, you know, I mean, I'm fine, no worries. But, you know, like reading that, it was, you know, definitely gave me the feels for sure. And it was like, man, emotions. It's so weird because I also have depression, so I don't always have emotions. Except right now, which is anxiety.
Anxiety is an emotion, right? I feel like that's a thing that most writers, I feel like that's an anxiety is an emotion most writers can understand, right? I feel like we mostly share that, don't we?
Yeah, I think, you know, but it was really beautiful the way that Sabrina was saving Savannah's essence and didn't want to let go. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, either regardless of whether or not they've lost somebody specifically to, you know, to suicide or just in general in death. Mm-hmm. And man, it struck a chord with me for sure. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
That actually brings up an interesting topic, which is what I know that the easy answer is we don't have a responsibility, but we have a need to be aware. Obviously, writing elevated fiction that exaggerates things the way the horror genre does, taking everyday fears and placing them into the, you know, raising them up, making them supernatural, or just raising them to the point that they're discussing mortality. What kind of responsibility do you feel like you have? Do you worry about how readers will perceive your work, or is that something that you'll go crazy if you worry about?
Yeah, I try to balance it. I do try to look at it, especially when I'm writing it, you know, initially and drafting it. I try to think about, you know, different perspectives. How could this be read? You know, how could this come across that I don't mean for it to? But then honestly, once it's published, at that point, I'm like, it's in readers' hands now. They will make of it what they will. Because like you said, you can drive yourself crazy with, oh my gosh, you know, and then, you know, that can become paralyzing. So I try to, and I do think there is some responsibility, you know, to. I always say, if you want to offend people for some reason, at least do it intentionally. Like, don't do it. Like, sometimes I think people don't realize necessarily what they're writing, and then it's like later they're like, oh, I didn't realize it would come across that way. Like, I don't know, if my work is provocative in some way, I at least hope it's intentional and it's something that I'm like, yes, this is what I was trying to say, not what I accidentally said. So you know. But I always say that one of my favorite sayings when it comes to writing, there was mileage may vary. People can get different things out of it. I mean, there are works that some people think are like, you know, oh, that's so great and they're so feminist. I'm like, I don't think that's feminist at all. I think that's awful. I think it's trash. But if somebody else thinks it is feminist, it's not my place to be like, no, it's not. Like, you know, mileage may vary. So
yeah, I definitely got like a lot of those, you know, I can, you know, kind of tell what you're going for sure with a lot of how the male characters are in And Her Smile Will Enter the Universe. Definitely has like a, okay, nobody fucking get mad at me. Y'all can tweet me later or whatever, but, you know, it feels like old school feminist lit, you know, as I mentioned previously, but it feels like more like definitely like the days when women were legit property. So, yeah, when you really didn't have any options. So it was like, it's interesting because it kind of evokes to a time, you know, to an older time, but at the same time, it still remains pretty current in its setting. That's what I noticed anyway. And it has a problem with me saying the F word. Hey, send me a message. It's cool.
Yeah, like I always hope that, you know, sometimes when I'm writing something like that and I'm like, maybe someday it'll be really dated. Or I always say this with Women in Horror Month. Like, I hope someday we'll get to a point that people are like, why was there ever Women in Horror Month? Things are so equitable now. Like, that's like what I'm always hoping for. But, you know, yeah.
So this is where people end up hating me. See, I just don't think we can live in a world where that's even an issue. So my thing is, I featured so many women writers on this show, for instance, not because of any desire to push any kind of agenda, just because they deserve it. They're great freaking artists, period. And that's the world we have to live in, whereas people are we're recognizing the merit of what's out there more than worrying about the messaging of the merit of the value being out there. And I know there's people who say that that's a pie in the sky, overly optimistic view, but at what point do we need to just make that jump? Because I think we should have made that jump 20 years ago.
Or maybe we never should have had to worry about making the jump. The things should have just
right, but I look at it as my generation like inherited a bunch of shit, and I think that the wheel has started to turn, you know, in very good. But I will say the horror genre does get kind of a bad rap in this respect. I want to defend the genre in that there have always been very important women writers in the genre, almost more than any other field of writing, if you really look at it. Because yes, I recognize that you can look at the Brontes and make a point that, oh, it's not just horror. Yeah, okay, fine. But
they're on my mug. There's the Brontes. Because what I would say, they're there, right there. There you go.
Oh, I love Jane Eyre so much.
But I'm a big Jane Eyre person. My next book that's going to be coming out is Lucy Westenra from Dracula and Bertha Antoinetta Mason from Jane Eyre.
Yes.
Who are like hanging out, going like against Dracula and Rochester. So that's
fucking A. I'm down. I'm overly excited about this. I'm sorry. It's like whatever happened to the bad woman in Jane Eyre, and now yes. Sorry, I'm too excited. I know.
I just feel like the horror genre, of course, from Mary Shelley to Shirley Jackson to Anne Rice, who gets slagged, but you know what? I was there in 1980 when that paperback was mailed to every American household because everyone read it. It was like this NutraSweet gumball. Everyone got a taste of it. I remember the excerpt of Vampire Lestat appearing in Twilight Zone magazine. Everyone bought that issue if you were into horror because you got the first 20 pages. It was a big deal. So I think women have always had a very strong impact. Do I wish people like Lisa Tuttle and Melanie Tem and Elizabeth Massey had been bigger than they were? Yeah, but everyone was falling under the shadow of Stephen King at that point. So it wasn't just women, it was just everyone. So I feel that the horror genre I'm not gonna say it done right by women, but it's done closer to right than most genres.
I do think that the women have always been there, and yeah, I think what's ironic is when we were talking about the Brontes, I feel like horror and romance are the two genres, even though they're so different in so many ways, but they're like both genres, and it's both like the Bronte sisters I consider are both horror and romance. You know, that they both did focus a lot on women, and it's funny because they are so different, even though I think that there's probably crossover, because I think romance is horror, and horror, you know, can have romance in it, so I actually think there's more of an overlap than a lot of people do. But yeah, I do think that
in the real world, definitely.
yeah, I do think there have definitely always been women in horror. So I think that I think it's good to make sure that people know that, because I think sometimes it can be overlooked. And I do think your point about the fact that for a while Stephen King was sort of like, you know, everybody was in the shadow of Stephen King. I think it's also interesting that people sometimes act like, oh, horror, you know, that wasn't a viable genre. We're back to a point where we're all acting like, yes, it's a viable genre again. But when we lost our space in bookstores for a while, there wasn't even a horror section anymore. And yet I think that the most recognizable, like, living, working American writer is Stephen King, and has been for decades. So it's always weird to say like, oh, this person that almost anyone can recognize, you know, almost even kids could recognize a picture of Stephen King, and it's like the genre he mostly writes in. Like, well, that's not viable. Like, yes, it is. Like, whatever. So I think our relationship as, you know, as a culture to horror has always been kind of weird anyways. It's always been there. It's always been viable, but then sometimes we act like it's not. So it's just weird. It's really weird.
I mean, to be fair, like, have you seen Stephen King lately? He's aging into an old woman. He looks about as good as Steven Tyler does. Like, I mean, we got such great lit out of King when he was, you know, when he was like high as a kite. But that shit's gonna age you. You do not want to end up looking like that later. I have a personal vendetta against Stephen.
I think it might be just the Maine weather.
I've never been to Maine. I wouldn't know.
It's just cold. But good seafood. Good seafood. Very good seafood. And they have Moxie. For all you soda hounds out there, Moxie soda is available in Maine all year round. You don't have to go beg the liquor stores down here to bring it in for you.
Y'all call it pop up there?
No.
Okay, because we call a soda Coke down here most of the time. I don't know why.
I don't know what anybody calls anything anymore. I know that it's different, but like depending on region, but I don't know. I don't really drink it, so I don't really know. I'm like, it's that thing. It's got a different name.
I drink a lot of it because caffeine is not really a drug.
It's kind of
telling yourself that. I'll just have some black coffee injected straight into my veins, please.
Listen, they sat there and said we need something with ginseng and mango in it. So, because that's an unholy creation that couldn't happen in any less than an industrialized nation.
That's nasty.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Ginseng's harsh as shit. And why are we putting something supposed to boost your energy into a soda that's already got caffeine in it? That is the weird. I mean, I know energy drinks. I'm going to go on a rant about this because I love caffeine.
I love caffeine as well. So I did want to make sure that we got in talking about Invention of Ghosts. It came out from Nightscape. It was a charity novella for the National Aviary, which is a bird sanctuary, a large bird sanctuary, exotic bird sanctuary. How did you get involved, and how much of a passion is that?
You know, it's so the National Aviary is like a bird sanctuary in Pittsburgh, and it's actually just as a place that my husband and I have gone a bunch of times. We're members. I love it there so much. They do so much great, you know, outreach and do so much great work, and it's just, I think birds are just fun. It's just like they're so cool. There's, you know, they have penguins and owls, and like we've gotten to like go and like hold baby owls like when they're like this big and like they fit in your palm of your hand, and it's so cute. And it's just, they're doing such great work, and everybody there is so nice and so like devoted to conservation and everything. So so whenever I got involved with the charitable chapbook series for Nightscape, it was like, you know, what charity do you want? Like that's definitely one of my favorites. So that's just just something that I just love. Birds. Yay. They're in a lot of my stories too. It's funny though, the mention of ghosts, there's like no birds. I have others, like so many stories that there's tons of birds, and like that one there's none, but it went for the birds. So, birds are involved.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading Something Borrowed, Something Blue, holy fuck, man, that made me scared of being a mother. Jesus, I don't even know if I want kids, but it's like, whoo. I do have one question about that because, is she popping out some bird-human hybrids, or is it just strictly birds?
Just birds. It's just
okay.
Birds. Bird-human hybrids kind of creep me out too much. Like I wanted it to be still kind of pretty, even though it's creepy. But bird-human hybrids wouldn't be pretty. I don't think they'd just be creepy.
There's a Indian horror film that came out last year called Ghost Stories, and there's a hybrid bird woman in that piece, and it's completely terrifying. It's not okay.
I feel like I need to Google that.
It's a great film. There's 4 segments. It's an anthology. The 4th one's kind of weak, but the first 3 are so good. You can it's on Netflix, but you have to search for it because all Indian cinema you have to search for on Netflix because it's buried.
Yeah, I've heard of it for sure. I just, definitely. Well, I mean, to be fair, there's probably a bunch of stuff called Ghost Stories. There is an anime called Ghost Stories, which
just make sure you get the one that's in the Tamil language, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
So Invention of Ghosts also, I mean, it had that Ginger Snaps meets the Craft thing going.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah.
And I just find it's interesting because that kind of thing can go bad fast with the wrong storyteller. Because it can seem cloying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you didn't because you stayed on the ground with it. Like you stayed with the characters. And obviously all your work really, character is more important than necessarily the supernatural side of it.
Yeah, I think that would be true. Yeah.
So, I mean, how much of your writing do you sit down and say, this is the story I want to tell? And how much is like, I have these characters and I really want them to go on this adventure?
I think it depends on the story. Sometimes it's definitely the concept first. You brought up Clawfoot Requiem. It was definitely the bathtub full of blood, and then I built the characters around it. That was, I saw this image of a bathtub full of blood, and I'm like, okay, like, what's going on there? And then I sort of built the characters around it. But then other times it's definitely the characters first, and then kind of figuring out how to flesh out the supernatural elements of it. I think with Invention of Ghosts, it was definitely the characters. It was these two girls and this friendship that was getting torn apart. And so that, I think that definitely was kind of where that started.
Is there, I mean, the other thing that's amazing about you is like, we're really talking about the last few years have been a whirlwind for you. That's just insane. Because you hit 2017 like a sledgehammer would hit a fly. And it's been no turning back. Is it intimidating to have like so much happen in such a short period of time?
I think the day-to-day living of it doesn't probably feel like maybe how it looks from the outside. It's just like, there's lots of just days that I can't write or I want to write and it's awful. And so from that point, it's like any kind of sense of like, oh, look at all the things I've accomplished. It's just like, wow, I can't even write a sentence today. So I feel like there's balance. And so it definitely doesn't feel like maybe as much as it maybe looks like sometimes from the outside. I don't know. I never know what it looks like from the outside. So from the inside, I'm just trying to write a story. Like right now I'm working on, I just finished a short story and I've got another short story due. So it's just like kind of focused on that right now. So yeah.
So are there any things that will really spark inspiration for you where you go when you have that writer's block?
Usually it's some kind of like watching something new, like a new show that I've never seen, a new film I haven't seen before. I used to really like going to museums. That was always nice, or going to like the aviary or something, and it would just help get my mind kind of moving. And that's obviously not been something that been able to do over the last year. So it's definitely been a little bit harder to get inspiration than it used to be. I feel like it was a lot easier before, but still trying to find those ways of like, just kind of getting out of just the same kind of rigmarole of every single day, day after day, which I feel like the pandemic has made every day feel like the same day. I feel like it's been the same day for like 13 months now, but
Yes.
It's Groundhog Year.
Again.
So DJ Donnelly asks, have you ever seen an apparition, UFO, or anything else that you couldn't rationally explain? I'm going to say I have not.
I wanted to ask that or something similar. That's an excellent question.
I've definitely seen odd things. There's definitely been weird things that have happened over the years. I think my favorite thing is whenever I was writing the title story in my collection. Like it's inspired by Sharon Tate, who I'm just a huge fan of. And I remember like I really wrote that in like an evening, and it was just kind of this very intense experience. And then like I go to the top of the stairs and just this pillar of light appears, and it's just there. And it's just there, and I'm looking at the pillar of light. It seems like it's looking back at me, and then it just kind of dissipates, and I'm like, okay, cool. And I just went on with my evening like that. That was the extent of it. Could it have just been that I was tired from writing continuously, and this thing appeared like, kind of just in my eyes because they were tired? Could have been something else. I don't know. But I also have weird things happen a lot that I'm just kind of very nonchalant about. So there's probably a lot of other stories, because I always remember something. I'll remember something random. They'd be like, oh yeah, that weird thing happened that time. Don't know why. And so just kind of accepting the unusual is just sort of being usual. So
I was kicked in the head a lot during the old punk rock days, so I don't trust anything I see or hear. So
everything would be a hallucination. This whole story may not even be real.
Listen, hard solipsism is a thing.
I have no idea what that is.
That is the brain in the jar. That is the Matrix. How do you
we're definitely
how do you prove real is real? Because the only way you have to interpret anything is through your own brain. Which, if that's suspect, where do you go for information?
Yeah, I came up with that idea when I was like 6 or 7, and my poor parents had to deal with me because I was like, what if as soon as you walk out of the room you're not there anymore? You have to stay in the room. You have to stay in the room. They're like, we're still here, we promise. I'm like, you can't know that. Like, I can't possibly know that. And like and then my dad's like, it's solipsism. There's a name for it. Yeah. Other people think it. It's a thing. And I'm like, that doesn't make me feel better.
I was awful for my parents because they like. I remember my sister reached whatever age, whereas she was no longer believing in Santa Claus or Easter Bunny or anything. And so they went to her. She's my older sister. And so they confirmed with her kind of. And then they came to me and said, look, it's going to be too hard to keep the house. So we want to let you know. I'm like, yeah, I never believed. It's fine. Because I never did. It never.
Skeptic.
It's like, I've seen the chimney. Sorry.
The chimney thing was always a bit of a stretch because we didn't even have a chimney. And I'm like, I don't know if people can really fit down chimneys. And then also it was kind of scary because if like Santa could come down a chimney, then who else could come down a chimney in like the middle of summer? Like it seemed like that was like really kind of shady. My parents never went that route. They were like, he can come down the chimney, but he doesn't have to. He can just use the stairs because we only had stairs to our apartment when I was little. So it's like, yeah. Santa's kind of creepy. Santa's kind of creepy when you think about it. Like, it's just watching you when he's getting into your house at night. Like, it's definitely horror. See? Horror. Back to horror.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of which, sorry, I got to interject with this, though. And if you watched Gremlins when you were a kid and you remember Phoebe Cates' story about Santa and her dad getting stuck in the chimney, yeah, that would probably fuck you up for a while. You probably wouldn't want to believe in Santa. Turn you off for Christmas pretty fast. I mean, faster than Krampus would. Not enough love for Krampus. I'm just saying that.
It's true. I loved Gremlins though as a kid. Like I was obsessed with Gremlins. Like I was like 3 or 4 when I saw it, and I was just like, yes, I love Gremlins. Like I wanted Gizmo, which is not smart. Like I feel like that movie like taught you shouldn't want Gizmo. Gizmo needs to be free. Gizmo needs to be free. Like he cannot be owned by humans. Like
he is a shitty pet. He's a shitty pet. That's all there is to it.
It's not Gizmo's fault.
Well, no, but listen, it's essentially the same movie as 1980s Alligator, though. You give a kid a pet that they shouldn't have, and things go bad. That's
Yeah,
it.
it's like, but how do you? I don't think you can fix a mogwai. There's no genitalia. I'm assuming. I mean, it's like it's all basically asexual reproduction.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So what happened? I always
I
was
don't think it's gonna
confused.
matter if you shave him, and nobody wants a naked mogwai because that would look weird and gross. You want it to be furry. You can't sell it otherwise. It's not cool until it turns into a gremlin. Then it can be naked.
I just think there's a problem. Like clearly, like any creature needs water to drink. Seems like the water bowl is a big challenge.
Well, yeah, it's
So
not.
maybe mogwais don't. Maybe they're just like the one thing that does not need to have water. I don't know.
I mean, we see gremlins drinking beer in the first movie.
I always had an issue with that. Like, how is that working? Yeah. Well, then Gremlins 2 actually kind of like made fun of itself and became so self-referential because it kind of knew, the time zones and stuff. So.
I love it.
I think Gremlins 2 is one of the best sequels ever made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's great.
I'll never get tired of seeing like Leonard Maltin giving a bad review of the first Gremlins.
Getting shot.
And then, and then just, getting strangled by the other gremlins. Oh, yeah. And then Tony
Christopher Lee is in it too. Christopher Lee's also in it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And his name's like Dr. Catheter. And I'm just like, I was looking at that on the IMDb. I'm like, really?
I didn't remember his name. I remember the scene though. There are a couple scenes he's in. It's great.
And Dick Miller gets to fight a gremlin on the streets of New York.
Oh, Dick Miller was national treasure. Rest in power.
Oh, great. So true. Yay.
So Next Gen says, I just got here, but do you use your life or any experience in your life to draw from? This is going to have a pretty simple answer, probably.
Yes, probably shamelessly so. Absolutely. I mean, obviously you don't want it to be so much that it reflects somebody too much that but, definitely fictionalized versions of things. Definitely.
It kind of ties into Hard Solipsism. Where else would we get anything, right? We don't have a choice but to use our lives. We're not that creative, really.
I was actually just going to say that. Nobody's that creative.
Yeah. Once every 100 years, a guy comes up with a pantheon of extraterrestrial gods when no one else was thinking of it, but no pressure. Our friend Dan Shine of the Flesh Wound Features asks, what are some of your favorite Hammer horror films, since you mentioned Hammer at the top?
Yeah, my gosh. So especially since I was just writing the Dracula Jane Eyre book, I actually wanted it to have kind of a vibe of Hammer films. So my husband and I have been rewatching a lot of them. My favorite is always, and I always say this is almost too predictable, but Horror of Dracula, the first Dracula movie, is so great. I like every time I go back to it, I'm like, it can't possibly be as cool as I remember it. It's always as cool as I remember it. It's just the performances, the costumes, the production design. It's just everything about it is so great. And I feel like that was the Dracula even more than Bela Lugosi that I feel like I first bonded with as a child. That was Dracula to me. So, and I like it. I like that one the most also because Christopher Lee talks the most in it. And I like Dracula Prince of Darkness. I just watched it again because you can't find it anywhere. At least we couldn't. And so we actually bought it on Blu-ray. And because I hadn't seen it in a few years. And I like that one a lot too, but he doesn't talk in it. So I'm like, I like Christopher Lee when he's like mouthing off because he's like so cool. Like he can be like such a jerk, but still be like so like debonair about it. And it's awesome. So Horror of Dracula, I love. Like I said, I like Dracula Prince of Darkness. The Gorgon is so sad. I always think that one's so sad, but I like that one a lot too. Haven't seen that one in a few years though. I think I just saw The Vampire Lovers. I don't think I'd ever seen that one before, the one with Ingrid Pitt and Madeline Smith.
The first of the Karnstein trilogy. So my favorite Hammer is Twins of Evil, the final part of that trilogy. I think that film is the best thing that Hammer ever put their imprint on. Sam, do you have any favorite Hammers?
MC?
It was a short-lived career as co-host.
I'm too legit to quit, Lauren. God. Although no lie, Addams Family Rap is still a banger.
It wasn't then.
I know. I mean, look. Oh, weird. I just had deja vu. Like I've experienced this exact moment before of like embarrassing myself. Well, but I'm pretty sure both of you were in there.
It's because during rehearsal you did the same thing.
What, with the bad puns? My
Yeah.
husband's a pun machine. It just like it can't be helped anymore. He just tells the worst dad jokes.
DJ Donnelly is following up asking, am I a skeptic? Yes, I am. But skepticism is misunderstood. Skepticism is not saying I don't believe in anything. It's simply I haven't been presented with evidence of anything to warrant belief. So give me your Bigfoot and I'll happily believe in him. You know, I'm not dyed in the wool about any of it, but I don't believe in anything until I have something that I can grasp onto. And that can't just be personal experience, because personal experiences are flawed, you know? So Jay asks, what scares you the most?
Awesome.
Loss of identity, losing yourself. I feel like that's a big one. I feel like you can even look in a lot of my work. That's definitely a thing. Loss in general, I think, losing people you love, losing, your home, your way of life, like whatever that makes you happy, that makes you feel like you. I feel like the things around you, help define you as well. And losing those, you kind of lose yourself. So that's what scares me. I wish I'd say something like Bigfoot though, because that sounds way more fun.
So as far as like loss of identity goes, would you say it's like similar to like loss of bodily integrity, with say body horror? Is it similar for you?
Yeah, I think so. It's one of the things with my book, The Rust Mains. I'm always worried that I speak
yeah, I wanted to ask about that.
But to me, this is kind of a spoiler. So if you haven't read it, sorry.
Oh no, I'm gonna read it.
In the book is that it's not necessarily as the book goes on that they hate the transformation, that it actually becomes something that they sort of embrace. So I think that was, to me, a way of dealing with, my fear of loss of identity. Well, just because change doesn't necessarily mean something bad. It's not necessarily, that change. So if you can kind of, I don't know, own it in a way, even if it's something terrible from the outside. So, that definitely plays into my work, that kind of going back and forth with who are we and what defines us, and, can we adapt, and how do we adapt as human beings? Because really we do adapt. I think this last year in particular has shown that many of us can adapt even though we didn't want to. But, there can be these kind of adaptations, and what does that mean for who we are? So.
Yeah, and I think everybody, even if it's a good change, a positive life experience, there's still, for me, like even if I'm having a positive life experience, I still don't want to do it because it's an interruption in my daily routine. And it's fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
So, yeah, either way.
I like that you bring that up, because I went to grad school for social psychology, and one of the things I remember we would study, one of the most stressful life experiences is getting married and having children, which most of the time that's things when people do them, they want to, not always, but most of the time. And yet that's like it's up there with like death of a loved one, because it's so catastrophic to your life, to your identity, to everything. So even positive things can still be stressful.
Yeah, I would say I definitely experienced that when I was just shortly before I actually got, my husband and I got married in Vegas, so it was pretty, straightforward. But I was definitely experiencing those feelings up until, we actually did get married. And even though it's like, I know it's an awesome thing and I know it's going to be like good, I'm still like, it's, it's not like, it's not cold feet. It's more like, this is kind of, I'm being propelled forward into this life, this big life-changing experience, and I'm not, feeling sure and kind of, weirded out because my first marriage. He's been married before. He's done it. But for me, it was like, it was, I was definitely had some anxiety. Well, I'm not going to say I had some anxiety. I am the anxiety. But yeah, like it wasn't, a great experience. Love my husband, but yeah. It's scary.
It is.
So are you like the remedial class then? Like you had to take it again?
To what?
Well, the marriage thing.
Oh, well, I mean, I said if I was going to do it once, I was only going to get married once. I got to do it the right way. So I went to Vegas. That's how this works.
Where'd you get married in Vegas?
Oh, the Luxor.
Nice. Oh. There's so many cool places to get married there. Like we thought about it. My husband and I actually got married in the Redwoods, but like I was like, Vegas would be cool. And he's like, no. My husband's much more of a nature person. I'm like, Redwoods are cool too. Like, I'm great. That's awesome. I'm cool with that. I just wanted to go somewhere like unusual. Like we got married at a place that had like a big Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox, like it's called the Trees of Mystery, and they're like gigantic. And so I'm like, yes, like I love kitschy things. So it's like, seriously, Vegas is very kitschy. So it was like, got Vegas, I can do this other like super kitschy roadside attraction with like redwood trees. So
that's so fantastic. Yeah, we just, we had one person in attendance. We had one witness, and it was like he was our best man and our best maid. And then I made all of my vows Ghostbuster quotes. So because we're huge Ghostbusters fans.
Love it. That's great.
Did you have any did you have any sort of like anxieties, like, getting married or, anything like that in your life, all those positive life experiences too? I mean,
yeah, I like you said, I have tons of anxiety. You said I am the anxiety. I'm like, yeah, like everything like freaks me out. Like, I love new experiences, but I'm always freaked out by them. It's this kind of like weird thing. I'm always like, oh, let's go do something that we haven't done before. Like I always make the joke, like we meet a lot of like wild animals at like conservation places. I'm like, eventually I'm going to like have some like really bad experience about it. But I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But I'm always like, I feel like I go through life perpetually anxious. And yeah, so like moving in with somebody is always scary. I think like that's like a huge like adjustment. Like what if you have like weird habits that like the other one's like, no. So yeah, like I think all life experiences, like changes are intense, and we don't a lot of times talk about them either. Like we're saying, like I didn't even realize how much that people do report that even these happy life experiences are so scary. So I feel like we kind of are like, oh, you should just be happy about this, and it's like things are hard. Being human is hard. Like we don't talk about that enough. Just being alive is like a struggle. It really is hard. So.
Yeah. I actually was having a weird thought about that last night. So, I'm just chilling in bed, getting ready to fall asleep, and I'm watching myself breathe, and I'm watching, my chest expand under the blanket, and just sort of like, regardless of what's happening in my brain right now, like whatever I'm feeling mentally, there's still some part of me that continues to survive and carry on. Mm-hmm. And yes, we could always, narrow that down to the science and whatnot. But I kind of like to know, it's like, well, what if my body just decided to stop doing its thing? It's, I know, kind of a strange thought.
No, it is. It's weird though. Like you think of all the things you automatically do. And like, I've totally had those thoughts of being like, what if my body just decides it just forgets to breathe or like do some basic function? How does it know? I don't consciously think about it, but some part of my brain is like, yeah, we're going to keep doing this. And I'm like, man, it knows more than I do. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, like when you think about those little small actions that are just happening in the background, I think it kind of can make it easier to deal with those changes. Sort of like, well, my body's going to keep living until disease or an accident strikes it down. So maybe just keep pushing forward, like that old Rocky thing. It's not about how many times you get knocked down. It's about how many times you get back up and whatnot.
When all life can be reduced to a Chumbawamba song. But no, it's funny because what you're talking about is the fact that we have bred ourselves to be convinced that our thoughts are us.
Yes.
And that's not at all true. Our thoughts are part of us, but our brain is one organ, right?
Yeah.
It's only one part, but we weigh it as if it's like 95% of the equation, which is why we can't imagine life ending. Like we can't imagine the vast nothingness after death. Because we're so convinced that our brain process is us, that the secession of everything else. Well, we must go on, right? Well, no, but if we put it all really in perspective, well, every part of us that's vital is just as important as every other part. Our brain is certainly not more important than our heart. Now, of course, we can't write books with our heart. despite what people say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we like prioritize the brain, because it's the thing that actually makes us, decide consciously, what are we going to do? What are we going to eat? What are we going to wear? Or who are we going to be? So, I mean, I think it shapes that more, even though, like you said, like the heart or the lungs, we may not think with those, but they're obviously important. So, but I do think that we prioritize the brain because it is the thing that kind of shapes our identity. More so than, I don't know what my heart necessarily looks like. I think I had an EKG done once. I know like what the waves look like from it, but like, yet the things that we do with our minds are the things that kind of define us and define us as to how other people see us. So
yeah, it's that whole like feeding a self-portrait back to the ego thing constantly, which sounds like a really negative thing, but it's actually a very neutral thing. There's no other way to do it, right? Jamie from Jamie's Heart has this question: who is your favorite final girl from a horror movie?
Ooh. First one I think of is Sydney from Scream, but I really like I really like Alice in the 4th and 5th Nightmare on Elm Street. I like her a lot. I really like her, and I can't remember her name, but and I can't even remember what chapter because I get Friday the 13th mixed up, but the one with the telekinetic girl. I can't remember her name, and I just watched Camp Crystal Lake Memories, so I feel like I
Shepherd.
Oh,
yeah. So yes, so I really like that one. Really like that film too. That's like my favorite. Like I can never remember the names, like the subtitles of all the Friday the 13th. It always makes me sad. I'm like, I'm gonna remember them. I remember at one point in my 20s, I'm like, I know them, and I remembered them all for like a year, and now I'm like, New Blood. I think it's New Blood. I think if I had to put down money, it's New Blood. But
it is. You win.
Okay.
I have to go with Swapna from Game Over, simply because she manages to handle her situation while in a wheelchair with broken legs.
I do like Sydney quite a bit. Because it's like Scream 4. I was thinking, is she finally going to be the killer? No. But you know what? Bitch still survived. She's like, stay in power. And what are on that note, what are your thoughts about Scream 5?
I don't have too many thoughts about it. I only just saw Scream 4 like a few months ago. Like I was just like, meh. I love the first one. I didn't really like the second one because I mean this is a spoiler, but I think nobody really cares at this point if you haven't seen Scream 2. But I didn't like when Randy got killed. I just thought that like the character had so much more potential. And I felt like, it kind of took out some of the tension you could have had with the other characters. So it was just kind of like, I lost interest after that point, really. So yeah. But yeah, I just saw Scream 4 for the first time in like November. So yeah, it was fine. It was better than I actually expected. I had no hopes for it at all. And I was like, it's fine. It's fine. So I don't have too many opinions in Scream 5, but
Scream 5 has the opportunity to be my favorite of the series because it's Radio Silence are making it, and they're the guys who made Ready or Not.
Oh, well, I just think it's like if you've got two, you have to have two directors to replace. If you need two directors because you had Wes Craven.
I'm just not a Wes Craven fan, so
that's fine.
This has a lot of opportunity for me.
I'm just saying, like, I feel like you don't really need to make it, but it's whatever.
Yeah.
So I know somebody already asked who's your favorite final girl, but do you have a favorite horror nerd other than Randy from Scream? Because I feel like the horror nerd character is kind of overlooked, and they always get killed off. Like Chris Kattan in House on Haunted Hill and the remake, obviously, but Matthew Lillard in 13 Ghosts.
Yeah.
There's a genre of character that just doesn't get any respect or love, except maybe the nerd from Cabin in the Woods. That's about the only one I can think of.
Yeah. No, I like this. I like this question, but I've never really thought about it before. So yeah, I'm gonna just have to go with Randy from Scream, but now I'm gonna be thinking about it afterwards. So I like that. I do. I think that there's like different kind of stock characters that sometimes don't get as much love as say the Final Girl does, which I love Final Girls. So like it's totally cool. Give them all the love in the world. Just give other love to other people.
Nice. Yeah. It was just such a bummer though when Randy got killed. I was like, that was the biggest letdown of like, I saw Scream 2 in the theater and I was like, ugh. And I was like a kid, but I was like, man, I liked Randy.
Yeah.
He's the one I
think
identified with the most.
Yeah, I think I actually had read spoilers online about it ahead of time that said he was going to get killed, but I was like, no, maybe they're just wrong because sometimes they'll plant wrong spoilers. So I was hoping, and then he totally got killed. I'm like,
Like, maybe it's just one of the fake scripts.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they cut it. Maybe it's different now. It's not different. No,
it's not different at all.
Yeah, I was really pretty angry about that. I remember, like, this is totally bringing up like memories from like when I was a teenager because like that came out when I was like 14 or something, and I was just like, it was really bad.
I know. It's like, that's my guy. Like, I don't care about Jerry O'Connell's character. He's looks like a Ken doll. Get him out of here. His hair is
totally true. Like, wow. I'm actually like, I'm back in middle school right now, like in like my like pre-algebra class or whatever, remembering like how excited I was about going to that movie. And I think like there was this weird period of time. I don't think they still let people do this, but there was a weird period of time at our like local theater that like you could get into an R-rated movie if your parents signed the back of your ticket, which makes no sense. Like this was an actual thing that happened in our small town. I don't know if this is other places or just in our small town theater. So of course my mom would sign like my ticket.
Yeah.
The back of like a friend's ticket.
She wanted to see the
my mom was not a big slasher fan. She liked Halloween, but she, neither one of my parents were big slasher fans. They love horror, but I was the slasher fan in the family. And they're like, we don't want to go to this movie, but we'll sign the back of your back of your ticket, I mean. It was so weird thinking back. But like, yeah, we totally got the backs of our tickets signed by my mom, and we went in and it was not good. And I'm still angry. You just resurfaced some bad childhood memories.
That's what I do. I trigger people.
This is the opposite of therapy when you come on this show.
I know, right?
We will validate your parking and help you with the first bill from the psychiatrist.
Oh man, that signing in the back of the tickets though, that's a great memory I'd completely forgotten about, because every once in a while, like years later, I would find one with mom's signature on the back.
You're like, what's this? Why did she sign it?
That's so weird. But I mean, at video stores at the time, you could like let your kids rent R-rated movies. Like you could be like, yeah, they can come in and rent R-rated movies. So I mean, I guess it was just a thing. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of funny.
For me, that's how I grew up. I mean, I think the only thing is, sometimes if it was like a horror movie that I wasn't really interested in because I was too young, like my mom really wanted to see Alien 3 in the theater, so we went. But I remember like sleeping through most of it because I was, still kind of like, I'm still a kid, whatever. I'm going to fall asleep during the movie. I wake up at the very end, like right before Ripley throws herself into the incinerator or the furnace, whatever you call it. The thing with all the fire, all the
industrial thing. Yeah.
It was the lead works.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I love Alien 3, like you wouldn't believe.
And yeah,
I'm not a fan. I am not a fan. If my dad is watching this, which I think he is, we've just like surfaced his trauma because he was so excited about seeing that movie. I remember as a kid, he was so excited and he hates that movie. I think it's his most hated movie because they kill off everybody at the beginning, like everybody. But
yeah, well, you see, I don't like aliens, so erasing as much of aliens as possible.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cool. I should have asked this question before I agreed to come on this show.
You are not the first. You are not the first person to give this speech.
Question.
You're not the first. There's an entire show where I debate a guy on this channel, Jonathan, actually, who's in the chat. You can absolutely watch, and it's painful because yes, the screenplay makes no sense to aliens. It just doesn't.
It doesn't matter. That's not what it's about. It's about I don't care about that. It probably doesn't make any sense. But like, oh my God, like Sigourney Weaver is amazing as Ripley. Newt is like the coolest kid. Like most kids in movies are terrible. Michael Biehn is just so hot. Like I was in love with him as a kid. Like way more in Aliens than even in the Terminator, even though that's more of a romantic thing. He was so cool as heck. Bill Paxton is so great as Hudson. Like you've got all this like. All the characters are so cool in it and like memorable, and I love them. But yeah, I mean, yeah, they're like space marines or something. I don't know. Doesn't matter. I don't care. It's cool, and there's monsters. And there's a little kid, and like I saw Aliens for the first time when I was like 3. I was real little. Like my dad had brought me and my mom along on like a business trip, so we were in like a hotel, and so I couldn't go anywhere, and it was on like HBO. My dad's like, "She's fine," and my mom's like, "I don't know." My mom, who would later sign the backs of all the tickets for me, but at 3 she didn't know. But I remember I was so excited because it was like a little kid, so I was like, "Hey, I could be in this movie. I could kill aliens too."
I never thought of it that way. But I'm going to have to kind of like the next time I watch Aliens, think of it from Newt's perspective, because I remember being really scared when I saw Aliens because Newt was like trapped for a good portion of the movie.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, but
she's trapped in it. She's trapped in a air vent, which is where the alien in the first film hides from the crew. It makes no sense. I'm telling you,
like, Alien, that would be a better movie.
Alien is a superior film in every way. I mean, Alien is a masterpiece. It just is.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that.
It
but
just is
amazing that I really like.
Sorry, kids.
The reveal of the Queen is like, dude, that shot alone is kind of like what did it for me. It's just
also, can I ask, do you like the Alien director's cut or the original theatrical release better? Because they're very different movies, really, because we don't find out what happens to Dallas in the original cut of Alien, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, with the extended cut, it actually does make more sense, and it's a better movie.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I saw the director's cut of Alien.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen both, right?
Oh, yeah. No, I've seen both. There's things I like about both versions. I don't particularly like the hive scene in the director's cut of Alien because it's unfinished. It doesn't have that same sheen as the rest of the film, and it's one of the best looking films ever made. So to get these scenes that were clearly not really finished, it's a little bit disappointing. But the other thing is, I kind of love the fact that the original Alien, it really leans into its title. Everything feels nightmarish and weird, and it feels alien. You feel like you do not know how you would deal with this situation. There's no answers, and
that's true.
And I think that providing answers or illuminating any more of the story than we got in that theatrical version is dangerous. That said, it's Alien. I don't know that there's a way to go wrong.
I'm over here like Team Alien Resurrection. Anybody?
Yeah, right. It at least has Winona Ryder in it. That's cool. Like that's cool. That's like
did that back shot like with the basketball. Like legit did it.
That was cool. And also, all the dead Ripleys is we're talking nightmarish. That's a nightmarish scene. All the dead Ripleys. That's a really creepy scene.
And that's just like a callback to the scene in the director's cut of Alien with Dallas in the hive and the being like the egg morphing thing. So
yeah,
I mean, if you've seen it, I mean, if you watch that director's cut and then you go see Alien Resurrection, you're like, oh, that's a little callback. Even if you haven't, even if you've only seen the theatrical, I think it will still come off as new.
The thing I really wish they'd done with the franchise is I wish they'd continued to evolve the aliens and not made it just a life cycle. Because the cool thing about the original is you didn't know what was coming next. And even in the second film, you kind of know what's coming next. I like the unpredictability of the first film. I wish they'd done more with that. I wish they'd, especially by the time they get to Alien Resurrection, it really feels like we understand those monsters way too much.
Also, I think one of the things that I know Giger wanted to do, and it was kind of built in a little bit, and it was explored slightly in Alien 3, but I didn't think as well as it could have been, is that they become like whatever they nest in. And they never really get into that very much. They only kind of touch upon it in Alien 3. And I actually always thought that that was a neat thing, that like, I didn't realize that until I like looked at behind the scenes stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that one is slightly different. But I think that was like a cool detail that never really got fleshed out that much.
Yeah, and that could have led us to the aliens having different forms and being surprising and still being alien. The problem with, of course, you can't call it an alien anymore. The reason we call them xenomorphs now is because it's so recognizable. So,
what if the stuff that Giger didn't get to do? What if that became the species? What if that became Species?
So the new comic book from Marvel is saying exactly that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I
haven't seen Species in years.
It's not. It doesn't live up to our memories of it, really.
I didn't love it at the time. I felt like it was kind of like a low rent Alien or Aliens. Like, even though I thought it had some neat ideas in it, but yeah. But, I'm probably easier to entertain now with that kind of stuff than I was then. Like, as a kid, I was like way meaner critic. Like, now I'm like, it's fine. It tries. It does its best. I'm a lot nicer.
Everyone gets a trophy. Well, guys, we actually are 10 minutes over our hour. Like I promised, this show goes way too fast, and we're having way too fun with me getting beat up about aliens. But Gwendolyn, I really want to thank you for coming on. Where can people keep in touch with you? I did put some links below this video that they can check out, but where's your most comfortable place for them to stay in touch with you?
You can check me out on my website, GwendolynKiste.com, or look me up on Facebook or Twitter. I'm also kind of on Instagram, but I don't ever use it. I always feel so sad. I've never posted a single picture, but I have like 200 followers. So I'm like, someday maybe I'll post something, because I almost feel guilty that people follow like a basically empty profile.
Tremendous. And your work is available through Amazon, most all of it? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so.
Anything coming up that we should have our antenna like buzzing about?
I've got some short stories that'll be coming out in anthologies this year, and then my next book is Reluctant Immortals, which should be out next year through Saga Press. So that is the Dracula Jane Eyre one. So, yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be awesome! I would love to see that get turned into a graphic novel. I'm just gonna say it now, in case anybody who has connections to graphic novel people have, can maybe make that happen for you. I would buy all of the copies.
We love accelerated rights, so absolutely do that. That's like found money, so that's a great thing. As for Sam and I, we will be back on Wednesday, just talking to the chat. As scary as that is, considering your guys' attitude tonight. They're just picking on me about aliens. This is a common thing.
Oh, good for them. I'm so happy they're picking on you for aliens. Good job, chat.
Everyone's happy that they're picking on me for aliens. Listen, unpopular opinions are the only ones that ultimately matter. So, because otherwise you're just part of the group, and that's basically body snatchers. Forget about it. On Friday the 23rd, Armand Rosamalia joins us at 8 p.m. And we have Kristen Cleveland on the Monday the 26th. And then we have a really special show on Friday the 30th. Riley Mitchell of the Paranormal Bucket will be on to talk about all your favorite cryptids. Runs one of the coolest web pages about cryptids out there. So get your Bigfoots and your Mothmen. Get them. Get your questions ready. So when you're asked him whether he's seen any UFOs or ghosts, I think he'll have a much different answer than I did. So
I have Bigfoot questions. I'm looking forward to that.
I'm kind of frightened of your Bigfoot questions.
You should be.
I thought so. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I appreciate it. It's been a really lively chat out there, even if it was mostly at my expense. Love you guys. Stay safe. Be good.
Bye.